Hello and welcome to the Eddie Conversation Podcast. My name is Eddie Vigil. This is episode number 98. And joining me today is cinematographer Max Goldberg.
Happy to be here.
You've been on the show before. We have to rewind the clock and go back through the archives to episode 31. So this is like 3 years ago.
Yeah, was it really that long ago? It's kind of amazing how time has flown so quickly.
Yeah, YouTube says 3 years ago when I looked it up, but yeah, time has flown. Lots has happened.
Yes, a lot, many things have happened.
Many things have happened. So I guess just to highlight a couple of the things up front, just to get that out. I didn't look back and rewatch our episode or anything like that. I have it baked in here enough, but like since then, we made a feature together, Out Past Dark, formerly known by another name, but we shot a feature, director, DP. We also worked on Sojourn, which was a
short film.
I'll say. In my scope of work, larger scale production, short film.
Yeah, a big short.
Bigger short. Big short. Those are the two big things
that we've done together.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think, separately we've done a bit of stuff.
So vague. Max is now a father.
Yeah, I have a 2-year-old daughter, which is a huge part of my life at this point. A huge change from when we were first working together on the early stuff. So, yeah, that's definitely a big
big one
since the last episode.
That's a big change. Yeah, so up front, I will say, on top of everything else, I do consider Max a friend, and we have kept up. We do other stuff. We try to keep up, and it is tough in this town to maintain friendships. So, again, we have met up, and I have thanked you personally already. But thank you again for being there for me and checking in. And stuff has been crazy personally, and as far as like a city in general. And thanks for being there.
Yeah, you're welcome, Eddie. Eddie, you're a good bud, good friend, great collaborator. And happy to be here.
I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna cry. Okay, let's jump into it. So I want to because you are a cinematographer, director of photography. I want to talk about where you are now versus, I guess what you're up to now, what your hopes are now, because stuff is always changing, and this feels like a pivotal moment. Lots of moments feel pivotal in the moment, but pivotal. But let's talk about what you're pushing now and where you are now. However you want to jump into that. I guess we can talk about like the spec work, but
yeah. So, a lot has happened. I guess career-wise over the last 3 years. There's been maybe even a few iterations that I've gone through in that time. But where I'm at now is, in this business, there's, often only so much that you can do to push your career forward. And I think, for myself at least, it was... there was a long period of time where I was maybe waiting for work or opportunities to come to me or for them to just arise out of, happenstance or however they do. And, I think that also led to a lot of stasis or just sort of things being sort of plateaued as far as my cinematography career. And it got to a point where I've been in LA for about 6 years now, and you know, progression is always, comes in fits and starts, and is never usually not as fast as anyone wants it to be. But I had a point about a year ago where I said, I just really want to take matters into my own hands a little more and try to get a little bit of agency over my path as a DP. And what that turned into was um, finding a bunch of spec projects to make. And so, if you're not a DP in trying to come up in LA, spec projects is kind of a mysterious term. Basically, what that meant was connecting with directors in LA who wanted to make essentially 30-second to 1 minute long commercials or kind of passion projects or fashion films or just short form content that would be self-produced and self-financed between the two of us, sharing costs, sharing production responsibilities, basically just self-generating work that would hopefully move our careers forward in some way, whether that's being able to share it with others and getting their interest to hire one or both of us, or just to build a relationship with each other, with the idea that as in my case, the director's career progresses, we'll continue to work together and hopefully not have to pay for the project ourselves in the future. That it would be a real paid job,
Yes, yes.
but that you have to start somewhere, and when you're working with people for the first time, you sometimes the way that can happen is on something that's a little bit lower stakes, and is something that we're able to produce together.
Yeah. I guess I want to add a little context to that for those that may be watching that are less familiar with the industry as a whole in terms of like the different routes that could be taken, like as you're balancing like what to do. Like you mentioned the spec work specifically. Like I think about it, I guess just to say briefly, is like, okay, when we're trying to make a narrative feature or something, a lot of people go the route of like, we'll make a short version of that and then we'll shop that around as an example to be like, we're capable of making something like this. This is kind of what it feels like. Now give us all of the money to make the real thing. What you're doing with spec work is kind of like the same thing as like instead of waiting for Nike or it was what was the shoe?
There was an on shoes spec that I did.
Yeah.
There's an ASICS one I did also. Those are probably the two shoe
Yeah. So
ones I've done.
instead of waiting for those companies to just trust that you can do it, it's like, okay, no, I've already shot your shoe, for instance. If you go to your Instagram, you can check out a lot of the recent spec work that you have done. I know there is more that
Yeah. Yeah, there's still a few things I've shot recently that haven't released yet, that are should be coming pretty soon after this, after we're talking today. And I have a few more projects that are in some version of pre-production or sort of conversations. I find that with these projects, because there isn't a actual client, it's really just on the initiative of myself and someone else that the workflow can sometimes take a little while for things to sort of percolate and actually come to a shoot day. And sometimes that's so frustrating that things can take a long time to go from first meeting to shoot, or from shoot to having a finished video. But it kind of is just the nature of the beast when everyone's volunteering their time and energy to make it happen amongst everything else they're doing.
I feel that. Yeah, that makes sense. Getting people together is hard. Follow through is hard. And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, definitely.
yeah,
But I mean, I think it also, my experience in this last year, it's also, I've had conversations, a first time phone call or a coffee meetup or Zoom with like many people, and there's really a really strong element of self selection and kind of just natural filtering from that process to
hmm
shooting, which I think it kind of works out actually because to make anything that's self generated is so hard that um, the people who aren't serious about doing it, um, luckily, you basically fall off the map pretty quickly from that first conversation. So, um, the people who are serious about it, it's apparent pretty quickly if we're able to maintain the conversation about something we want to do together.
yeah, yeah. There's many layers of weeding out the team before you get to shoot and all that stuff for sure. Yeah, I guess I want to dive into, like I mentioned, the Instagram. It would be nice to hear from you on kind of like specific goals on specific projects if you wanted to highlight any of those pieces. So like if anybody watched right now, they could technically pull it up and look to be like, okay, that's what they shot and this is what he was after. Like that could be kind of interesting to hear because I haven't dived that deep into what you shot with you, so it could be nice to hear that too.
Yeah, I mean the projects I've done recently. There's been a little bit of a variety in the types of work. I think for one reason or another, it's sort of fallen into a few different buckets. Um, a bunch of it has been some variation on, I guess you could call it a fashion film, in the sense that it's not necessarily branded by a specific um, fashion brand, but it's something that showcases people in in styled outfits in a cool situation or cool location. We're really just showcasing style in a way that down the line the director or myself is able, ideally able to show that to a real brand, um, um, a real clothing line, and be able to get work making a like a season campaign video or something along those lines for them. Um, I've done a handful of projects that were shoe related, like Eddie was alluding to earlier. I think it's just something that has caught the attention of catches director's interest for whatever reason. It's kind of in the same vein in some ways as the shoe thing, as the fashion thing, but they've been a little bit more like straightforward commercial, not necessarily as sort of sometimes fashion films are a little bit sort of ambiguous between sort of just a non-narrative style piece and having any sort of obvious through line that you would see in a commercial you might see on TV or on social media.
Yeah.
Um, and then there have been a few other projects that I've kind of run the gamut. Did a Tinder spec commercial. Did a Mercedes classic car commercial, which was a real project, but we kind of treated it a little bit more like a spec commercial, in that we elevated it a lot, significantly beyond I think what the client brief originally was. Um, done recently did a couple sort of short film projects that we're not sure yet whether they're going to be explicitly branded or they're going to just be short films that have a happen to have had a brand element inside of them. We're going to kind of see how the edit turns out. But that's the type of thing that you might call branded content. If it was being commissioned by a company. Did a couple fragrance spots. A couple of the projects I've been the most proud of lately were fragrance spots that we did on stage, and were opportunities to just do really, really interesting lighting, really interesting styling, amazing talent, um, really unique camera work. Those types of spots really are just a blank slate for you to just make interesting images
Yeah.
and compelling visuals. And one of them has been out for a little while, the YSL Black Opium spot, and then there's another one that I shot about a month ago that should be coming out in about a month or two. Not sure yet. That will be really cool, I hope. But that was a blast to work on, and really excited for that one.
Yeah, I'm looking at the YSL one right now. I know it's difficult for me to be like, okay, we have a blank slate. What do we do here? And I'm curious to be like, let's just talk about the YSL specifically. Like it says black opium over red. Is that the
Yeah, that's the name of the fragrance that
okay?
the spot was built around.
Okay, so what was for this one specifically? Like, what was your starting point, and what did you come in with? Was this all decided in pre, or was this exploration on the day, or how does this work?
Yeah, I mean this project, the director and I, we planned this out pretty extensively. I found, with all these specs, there's some have been really completely planned out in advance. Some we've just entirely found on the day. It's kind of run the whole spectrum, but this one we planned out pretty much completely. We had storyboards going in. We knew essentially exactly what we wanted once we were there in the morning. There was still a little bit of experimentation, like we weren't 100% rigid about what we were shooting, but we had a solid plan, and we were just executing that all day long.
Yeah, because as I watch it, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to imagine. I don't know what happens in some of like the lighting design. Like this isn't a space that I've really. I mean, y- I have.
Eddie's more of a storyteller,
I like what's the
grounded.
grounded, but it would be nice to dive more into this kind of stuff because I'm just seeing like lights fly around. I'm like I don't know what it looks like behind camera, like what's even happening. I just imagine like there's I don't know how much is happening. I can't really. It's hard for me to tell, but big wide shots. It looks like a big wide shot. I don't know how this was shot.
Yeah. I mean, we did a bunch of cool stuff on this one. I mean, we shot it on a stage that had both a pretty large white cyc, like a 2-wall with a corner white cyc, and also a 3-sided like black void stage. So like one side of the room had the black void, one side had the white cyc. We shot the project across both. I mean, for this one, we had a number of shots in there that are VFX comps, where we added a lot of scale to the shot using basically extending the set with VFX. So we would shoot a plate of our talent like standing on a handful of apple boxes, and then later in post we comped out the boxes and had her standing on this huge pillar,
Yeah, a big
which makes it
platform.
look, makes this sort of epic scale shot, which in reality she's just standing in the middle of a cyc on some apple boxes, 3 feet off the ground or something. So we did a similar one. There's one where she stands underneath it's like a big red orb appears over her. That was just her standing in the black void set. With I was with the camera up in a scissor lift, so it was still we had some resources to get a the angle we needed, but then the red orb and the worlds around her were comped in.
Okay, you still did the lighting on her too, as if she's still being lit practically, and then you add the red orb in
Yeah,
post.
yeah. I mean, all the lighting on the person is us and the lighting team. We still had a really small crew for what we were doing. Just a couple of my friends helping in lighting, and I had a friend come out to be a Steadicam operator, and another friend as a camera assistant. It's very, for any comparable project like that, extremely scrappy. But I mean, we had, when you look at the piece, there's sort of a mix of maybe more conventional beauty lighting and some gags where there's like a Jolico, which is like a spotlight that pans across the set or across the model. Had some effects where we had a top light that was suspended above her that dims up and down and has this flickering effect. So we had some cool lighting animations that we were able to mix in there.
That's fun.
That we're just trying to make the most interesting, evocative stuff we could.
Yeah, and I'm trying to imagine too, like if I were directing this, I'd be to me it feels really exploratory. It's like, okay, like I don't know, like if you were pitching these ideas to me, let's say, I'd be like, okay, I don't really I have a hard time envisioning it. So it looks like it's like, okay, especially on this kind of thing. I don't know how much of it you did, but like playing on the day to see how all right, let's try this, let's try this, let's try this. Okay, this is landing. But being that you come from the lighting space a lot, I'm I'm assuming,
Yeah, it's a fair assumption
that you know what it's going to look like, and
yeah. I mean, I think what Eddie's alluding to is I have some decent background as a gaffer, working in the industry.
Decent is an undersell. I think it's an undersell.
I don't know. Certainly a lot of people who have a lot more experience than me as well. I'm not, the most veteran person out there, but I've spent a bit of time working as a gaffer as well, on all sorts of stuff, and I try to bring that experience to bear on my own projects that I'm shooting as a DP. Whenever I can. I found some of these spec projects we actually don't light very much, or if at all, just kind of because of the nature of the productions, or if they're taking place mostly outside and in a little bit more uncontrolled environments or something. But certainly when we're doing something like that on stage, it's a chance for me to really lean into that side of me and try to be as creative as I can with the lighting.
I'll call it a chance to flex a little bit. That's how I see it. It's like, yeah,
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, you spend all this time working out the lighting muscles and understanding all of that, and it's like, okay, let's put it all to work, which is fun. Yeah, so that one was posted. I'll just highlight the date so it's kind of clear. This one was from September 5th was when you posted that one. Mm-hmm. And then I'll just highlight, I guess, one more here. This one was a little bit more extensive. It felt more narrative from the other ones that I was kind of noticing, but it's the on. It's such a weird brand to call out. It's like my on.
Yeah, just the on.
The shoe. Shoe.
I went through a little bit of research trying to figure out even what to call the spot, because I was like, is it on shoes, on running? It's just on. Like officially, it's just on. I'm like, it's so confusing.
It's hard to say. It's cool to look
It's a cool brand. It's a cool brand, though.
I see those all the time on set. As far as crew people wearing their on brand shoes, but I'm looking at this one. We're following a character who's in a hurry with a bunch of like files, and I guess she's trying to. I forget. Is she running to the copy machine? Does she need to get copied?
Yeah.
Is that what she's up to?
Yeah, she's going to the copy machine. So this spot on Cloud Go were the shoes that we're making the spot for. It was a really fun project. It's a vignette about this office worker who needs to get to the copy machine as fast as she can, and the camera follows her as she's on this epic journey to get to the copier while the clock ticks down to the deadline. And while she's running, we show off her awesome on CloudGo shoes, and also cut away to the some visions of her true inner self, which is as a runner, wearing her actual running outfit that she uses when she's running outside of work.
Yeah, I think it's a fun idea. Like it's a you get to see because on what's it called, cloud shoe. So
Yeah, these sneakers are called CloudGo,
okay.
but I mean they have lots of shoes.
So the on cloud go is not just for the runner; it's also for the office worker. So like
Exactly.
that's
Yeah, you
that's
can take it to both.
yeah, wear it to work. So you get to see in both contexts at the same time. You get to do these like fun. I know, like for me, the fun, like she's waiting in the elevator opens, she sprints out, and you have like this weird, like the camera
Yeah, we flip
flips.
the camera 180 as she literally jumps over the top of it.
Wow,
Um,
I couldn't tell that she
which
jumped over.
was
That's fun.
she it was slightly off to the side, so she didn't kick the camera, but
Safety for the
that
camera.
was when we spent a minute figuring out, which was one of my favorites from the whole piece.
Yeah, I mean those shots are super fun, and it's fun to implement those. And then like the classic, like I just think the slow mo shots are that's like the brand shot, really. It's like, okay,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
this is a badass shoe shot that the commercial people are there to see. Like that's the money. And I once it cut to like just the runner, I'm like, okay, yeah, this the this is the shot.
Yeah,
We got it.
it turned out really well. This is of all the specs I've done in the last year, this is one of my favorites for sure. It turned out really well. Everyone involved, just did a kick-ass job. The directors, editor, our Steadicam operator, everyone was really hitting it. It was a tiny shoot though. I mean, I think we had maybe less than 10 people there the whole time.
Yeah.
So it just shows you can do, some pretty cool stuff without necessarily spending a ton of money or having a huge crew or anything like that.
With the right team and the right vision, you can get it done.
Absolutely. Yeah, certainly had other projects that I spent more on that, it doesn't, the money and the people don't always translate directly to the results on the screen.
Tricky. You never know, really.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes a little bit,
Okay.
but
Okay.
it just depends. It definitely varies.
Maybe never
The efficiency.
was a wrong word choice, but yeah, you can be surprised. But yeah, okay, that's fun. That's fun. I know. I guess just to close out this one too, like parts of me are wondering, like, okay, you're trying to capture a person running. I'm like, okay, now is this dolly track? Is this like how do you track a person running in slow mo? Like, I don't know if I've been a part of a shoot that we've tried to go alongside a running person. I just know in film it's kind of hard.
Yeah,
It's a hard thing.
it is super hard. In this particular case, we used something called a rickshaw, and our Steadicam operator rode on it. So rickshaw in film world is basically a cart with wheels that is often pushed by a grip across the ground. So it's like it's just a little cart that someone can sit on with the camera and ride around. And then in our case, we had our Steadicam operator ride on the rickshaw with her Steadicam rig instead of wearing it on her body like you normally would see someone with Steadicam do. The rig was hard mounted to a speed rail pipe that was attached to the rickshaw. So we're able to have both. You're able to get fast motion with the wheeled rickshaw and the stabilization and control of a human Steadicam operator. You might ask, like, why didn't you just have the Steadicam operator without the rickshaw? You would do that for if someone was just walking around. Yeah, would work fine. That's what you normally do. But once you're trying to move the camera beyond a certain speed, especially if you're trying to follow someone who's running and trying to keep them in the same part of the frame the whole time. Steadicam can't walk that fast, and they can't really run at all, while still having a smooth frame. So that's where the rickshaw comes in. You have to just sit on it, and they get pushed around all day.
Nice. That's okay. Cool. And the rickshaw itself, there's no like rails, or it's kind of got its own wheels. You
Yeah,
can
it
push
looks
around.
like two big bicycle wheels on the back and a little wheel in the front and a handle which the grip pushes or pulls on to move it around.
Okay.
They also have motorized versions which are kind of more like a golf cart,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
which are used a lot, especially if you're outside. People use those a lot if you're trying to go faster. But for us, we were just inside this office building and didn't have a whole lot of budget, so we just got the push
Yeah, I
version.
mean, you had the benefit of the open space, which I think is helpful versus like you're
Yeah,
not pushing through a real office space with
yeah,
like no
exactly.
aisles
I
or,
mean, we the space we found was essentially an office building floor with nothing in it. It was just a completely barren room, like a huge barren room, which lets you do stuff like sprint across the room with a wheeled rickshaw. If there were a bunch of cubicles and tables and stuff, that probably wouldn't have worked as well. We would have. It would just been really, really hard to not run into things.
Yeah,
Probably still possible, but harder.
a little tricky.
And then for something like that, you would probably want to try like a dolly on tracks, so you're able to really put the camera where you want to, but with the size of the crew we had and the budget, that just was never going to be possible.
Yeah, it all worked out. Is how I see it.
Yeah, it all worked out.
Okay. Now that said, I guess I'll ask the insight to get this rickshaw and understanding the shots you wanted and how to get them with the size of the crew. This was something. Are you the person making the decisions on like, okay, this is a shot. This is a shot we know we need. This is the money shot. It's kind of like built into the brand itself. We know we're gonna get this. Are you the one saying like what equipment to bring, and you're like making those decisions, or is the director another person kind of like feeding that information to you
Yeah,
guys?
most of the time for these projects, it's been me making those decisions and certainly making the equipment decisions and finding the people involved, the technicians to manage them. I mean, deciding the shots is always been a collaboration, or sometimes it's just purely the director's vision. If they say, we want to have this tracking shot that follows a person who's sprinting across a room, we talk about that, and I'm like, okay, we want to do that. That sounds great. Here's the ways we can do that. It's going to take, XYZ. It's going to take the rickshaw. It's going to take a Steadicam operator, and then I go out and make that part happen. Both sort of in a producing sense. I went out on ShareGrid and found a rickshaw from a guy that was going to be affordable, and then also just on the day directing the grips and the camera people in order to line things up and get them from where we want them to go.
Okay, that makes sense. Now that said, I was gonna say I just want to. This is an example. I'm trying to example the experience that you have. Like you're not here to be like, okay, let's figure. Like, let me. I'm sure you do have resources to be like, okay, hey, so and so, I've never done a shot like this, or I have, or how can you give me some more ideas on how I can do this? I'm sure there's those resources available, but being that you do have like you've seen enough to be like, okay, this is a shot we want. These are ways to do it. It feels like it kind of comes, like the ideas come pretty quickly, and you're like, okay, I know what to do, and that's really, it's nice to have that kind of person
Yeah,
around.
I mean, I mean, the more time you've spent on set, whether it's as a DP or for me a gaffer or whatever your job is, I think the more you just get exposed to different scenarios and different techniques for executing, whatever the shot is, and for me, even though it wasn't necessarily a lighting thing, I'd been on sets before where I'd seen this done. I knew that it would work, and I just had that experience of seeing how things are done at different scales to be able to lend it to a project like this. That being said, there's certainly all sorts of stuff I haven't done before or I haven't necessarily seen done firsthand, which I might not immediately have the technical solution for if someone said I want to do this, but that's what a great community of DP friends and people online, and there's just endless resources out there for figuring out solutions to things if you're not sure how to do it.
Yeah, what comes to mind to you when you think of something that you haven't done or you haven't done yourself or you don't know how they've done it and like you'd want to do it yourself to get that experience. Does anything come to mind for that?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of. I probably haven't done most things, honestly, in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Some of the things I'm maybe less directly familiar with. Some of it probably has to do more with camera, with more sort of complex camera movement. I've spent a lot of time in the lighting department, and I have some, feel like a pretty good grounding in that space, but maybe less so other than just sort of observing stuff on the camera side. So, whether that's like, how to manage or select what type of techno crane or, stabilized head or, more specialty camera rigging. Is out there. That's not something I've ever used as a DP myself. I've seen it, but I don't necessarily have a ton of experience in how to choose exactly the right tool or the right crew for the job. But sometimes you just have to, you wait till the right job to be able to do some of that stuff, which takes sometimes a lot more resources to even have as an option.
Yeah, I guess maybe, yeah, and I guess I'll follow up with just asking too what something that is exciting that because this is a question that I feel or I think that I try to let's say as I'm gearing up for my next feature film, okay, and I'm talking to you, something that I try to ask is like up front, it's like okay, hey Max, what what kind of stuff? I mean, not okay. Forget the budget on this kind of thing. It's like, well, what are you excited? Well, I want this shoot to be exciting for you too. We're not just here to. I'm not just here to have you throw this on sticks and shoot one wide and we move on, or wide, close up. Okay, cool. Like what's exciting to you now? Essentially, kind of what's keeping you going. What's the next thing? Like what do you hope? Yeah, what what do you want to come next? Yeah,
what do you want to do?
What's exciting? Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. It's a hard question because I feel like it depends so much on what in the case of a movie or
he always says this.
it's what are we shooting? I don't think it makes sense to do some flashy camera work for a story that doesn't call for that or that wouldn't be told best that way. Like, I think, like a recent example, like the movie Anora won Best Picture, and I wouldn't call the camera work in that movie particularly flashy, or it was great, but it wasn't necessarily calling a ton of attention to itself. But it still told the story amazingly. So, maybe that's a cop out to say I don't know unless I know what we're making, but I want to be able to make the best. If it's a movie, I want to be able to tell the best story I can with the camera.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I'm thinking Solid answer. Solid answer. And consistent. I guess I'm trying to be like, okay, well, I one thing that one way that my mind works is I know when there's people I want to work with, let's say, like Max, for instance, I'm like, okay, I need an excuse to just have some fun and get on set with Max. Like, what's the excuse to get us together? So I'm also kind of thinking, like, what's the excuse to do this flashy camera move that he's dying to do? I need an excuse for that.
Yeah.
And then I could curate. I mean, that's kind of something I've always tried. I'm trying to balance myself right
Hmm.
too. Is like I have tended to come from the background of like, give me the ingredients and I'll build something around that.
Hmm.
Where like right now, I'm trying to reground and be like, okay, well, let me just focus on telling a good story and not really worrying about trying to check these boxes that, to worry about that later. It's a
Hmm.
good story first. But that said, I still, by default, kind of think about, I want the excuse to, like, give me an excuse to let Max do that cool shot that he's talked about forever. Like, and it's helpful for me to know. And maybe for others to know. It's like, if they have that idea, they could be like, oh, I know a guy who's dying to do this kind of thing.
I don't. It's hard. Still, maybe hard question. I don't know. I mean, I think the things in general that are interesting to me right now are, on the narrative side, using more expressive lighting. And these are kind of broad answers, but um, using just I guess a more expressive lighting palette and um, using that to enhance the story, or maybe just maybe just have a more stylistic atmosphere to the piece, or um, maybe kind of along the lines of some of the stuff we tried to do on Sojourn. I think using um, uh, camera movement um, to combine shots, and not necessarily make big huge wonders all the time, but just to tell more fluid, to use more camera fluidity to tell stories, and um, have the camera, like the perspective of the camera be a participant in the storytelling, and not um, not just to have the camera plonk down for a wide and overs, and call it a day.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. No, yeah. Okay. Um, I'm thinking about, again, we're talking essentially about where things are right now. And I, this is kind of curiosity for me a little bit too. I'm coming off of working I was script supervising I don't know, like a decent sized small short film. And um I'm being reminded, this is like the first narrative I've been on in like so long. So it was nice to be back on set doing a narrative, and being in that environment was nice. But it did remind me of, like, as a script supervisor, I have a very specific relationship to the DP. Like it seems to it's it's the hardest relationship for me to build on set. I don't know if it's a me thing or if it's a role thing or what, but it is interesting watching different DPs work and seeing how they go about stuff. To be vague, my question is, what, from your perspective, what separates a DP that's like maybe just starting out from one that is ready to like work on commercial work or larger scale narratives, like the building up of like what's being asked of a DP, and like what like I'm gonna call it like maturity level versus
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of lack of awareness of what's
Yeah.
happening. So like,
Yeah.
can you talk about that jump and
what
and
what it takes. Well, I mean, I'm not. I'm I'm not sure I'm there yet. So
You
but
look.
I can imagine. I can tell you from some things I've seen.
Well, let me address. Okay, we I'm gonna say that you're that's the bridge you're staring at right now. Is like spec work is this side, the real thing is on the other side of the
Yeah,
bridge, and
yeah,
I think, I mean, I know you are ready to cross the bridge. You're just saying you're
that's
not on the other side yet. Is
yeah,
what you're
yeah.
saying?
That's I guess yeah. That's more to it. I mean,
Okay.
I can certainly talk from my personal experience. Not necessarily saying I'm the authority on commercial
Okay.
DP work, but and I can also say there's plenty of people, not to name anyone, but who maybe aren't ready but are still doing it sometimes. So
Yeah.
you see kind of the range of situations on set with better or worse outcomes sometimes. But at least when I've seen really effective DPs or heard about really effective DPs on larger scale productions or just higher stress situations. I mean, a lot of it comes down to, I think, just a larger, maybe there's a couple things. There's sort of level of personal maturity, which Eddie was, you were alluding to, where you are able to maintain a level. I mean, there's DPs who don't remain calm certainly and do great work, but I think the ones who I admire are able to maintain a level of calm um, and confidence in spite of a very complicated and stressful and just high pressure environment where time is not on your side and you have a lot that needs to be executed precisely, and there's not a lot of room for error. So I think having that sort of personal and emotional maturity to keep your wits about you when there's like this war going around all around you, um, is a big part of it. In dealing with other people who might be losing their heads a little bit or are going to be looking to you for direction when things are seeming um, a bit uncertain. So that's I think that just that personal qualities is certainly part of it. But the other big half is having just a complete 360-degree awareness and experience to contribute in the prep process. Um, I think that what can really separate great DPs from people who maybe aren't going to end up being as successful or to struggle on a particular project is their involvement in pre-production, both being prepared for their own part of the project, but also their ability to um, contribute to or shape or sort of turn the, control the heading of the ship as it heads toward production in a way that's going to be the most beneficial to them. I guess I mean what I'm trying to say is sometimes there's a lot of competing interests on a project as it's being prepped. Um, a lot of different people with sometimes conflicting interests or sometimes lack of awareness of sort of the overall picture or how different things connect to each other. And I think a really good DP can have a body of experience and awareness to try to and to be able to influence decisions even in other departments, which will say like art department or when you're trying to design a set or design how you're going to dress a room, being able to provide input so that what the art department ultimately does, for example, is going to be to the greatest benefit of the shoot to be able to make the project look as best as it could. Whereas maybe if you weren't in a position to contribute to that conversation, things might not have turned out as well as they could. And that kind of goes to every department. If you're able to contribute to the conversations with costumes and with makeup and obviously with camera and grip and lighting, every facet of the film that's going to be showing up on screen. I think a great DP should be able to be an informed contributor to that conversation, and be able to shape things to the ultimate benefit of the project.
Of the story of the project. Yes. Okay. What I'm hearing is be a like being the quote unquote like the qualities of a good team player. Is that kind of is that how am I hearing that right, or how do you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a team player aspect to it. I think there's also sometimes, um, I mean, to put it uh, bluntly, I think you have to be able to take control in some situations, and maybe assert yourself um, beyond just being an equal collaborator, because that
Um,
can be the only way to shape the situation in the way that you need it to be. It's just, I think it's just a balance. Obviously, you don't want to be you don't want to be an a-hole, and you don't want to you know be a problematic person on the set, but sometimes certain decisions need to be made, or you need something, and you have to speak up to make it happen.
yes. Okay. I'm gonna reword what you said. It's not pushback. Cause I agree with I think how I'm receiving it is like you said, take control. I'm wanting to translate that into leading. Like essentially, you're in a leadership position, and lots not you're the DP is so I'm going to say so high up and important to the narrative as a whole that a lot of stuff just gets filtered through. I mean, it gets filtered through so many departments, but like there's like a essential nexus of like okay, director, DP, and depending on the show, it might be special effects, makeup, VFX, who knows what it is, but the ability to lead and like you said, like don't be an asshole. Don't like there's proper ways of going about directing a ship that where you
Yeah.
you don't need to just be a tyrant and
Yeah, I
a
mean,
dictator of some
yeah,
kind.
I mean I'm certainly not. That's not my personality type, as Eddie knows. But there's, and for better or worse, there are some legendary DPs who a lot of people look up to that are maybe a little more tyrannical than others. But yeah, there's certainly an element of. I mean, the main element is, I think, that leadership, both leading your own team and also leading across the production, even to parts of the production that you don't have as a DP direct responsibility for, but being able to contribute and just be provide your experience to any part of the shoot that it's going to
Yeah.
help.
Yeah. Okay. I guess because I just want to. This is me sharing a little bit. This is maybe a little venting, but I we've probably talked about this before, but it again it's coming back a little bit fresher, a little bit yeah, more fresh perspective on it. Where it's like, okay, it does bug me when when anybody, but for some reason I like I said, the DP stands out a lot. Um when there's like a lack of care, almost it almost feels like a lack of care or consideration for what other departments are up to. And it's like the verbiage I'll hear on set sometimes is like, "All right, we're lit. Okay, camera's ready. Okay, why aren't we shooting? Why aren't we shooting?" And it's like there are other departments that are doing stuff, and it's not all about camera and the lighting of the shot. The actors are being changed. Like whatever, the production's still working. Like what? There's like I have the frustration that I've seen DPs have for like their stuff is done or them going over and like adjusting art and changing things or like taking over and doing other stuff like it really bugs me and I that's something that I don't see as much from it's not even really about experience. I guess it's just like personality style or way of going about things. It could be a preferential thing, but um yeah, I think like your answer laid into the same kind of stuff I was feeling is like okay, these people aren't really leading a larger. They're not thinking about big picture. They're just kind of stuck in their own little bubble, and breaking out of that bubble and seeing what everybody else is up to, and pulls me a lot closer to like trusting the DP and other departments too, when I can tell they care about the other departments too.
Yeah, I mean, I think in any given project, the art department, the actors or the talent, the wardrobe, the makeup. I mean, everything that's in front of the camera is probably more important to making your project look good than anything that's behind the camera. And I think one having an awareness of that, and also being able to, like I was talking about, working with all those other departments in order to make everything, outside of your domain the best it can be, is that's my goal.
I like it. I like it. That's what we're about here. Okay, I just had to get that off my chest. Let's rewind the clock a little bit and talk a little bit about the stuff we've worked on together. Go a little bit behind the scenes on some of our crossover projects.
Yes,
'Cause,
the crossover. There's been some crossover outside of our projects as well, at least once.
What are you referring to?
When you were script supervising on a project I happened to be on one day.
Yeah,
Eddie showed up.
That was weird.
Hey, it's Eddie. What are you doing here?
I'm like, wait, you work on set?
This day playing.
I thought you were just a DP for me. No, that was fun. That was a random shoot. Yeah, let me go through, because last time you were on, I think we probably dived into popcorn, and that was maybe what we had about at the time.
Was it? Did we do the last one after Out Past Dark, or
it was
before Out Past Dark?
I think it was before. I used it. I recall using the podcast as I was like, I want to get to know Max more. I want to hear Max talk about himself and understand his background more before we, essentially live together for a month and make this movie. Like, I thought it'd be fun. Yeah. So, since then, we've done Out Past Dark, Sojourn, the little happy birthday short. There's been some things, but I'll focus on Out Past Dark now, formerly known as Trauma Days. Chama, not trauma, for those that are. Chama's the name of a small town, but
no, go ahead.
Okay,
go ahead.
All right, so let's wind the clock back. It's not too dissimilar from kind of where we are right now. Like we're a little bit far out. Yeah, maybe like it's just over a couple of years at this point. What year are we in?
2025.
4 years ago.
When we shot it was almost 4 years ago.
Yeah.
When it came out was 2 years
Last
ago.
Year?
Yeah, I don't know. There was a premiere, and then it came out on VOD like a long time after that.
Yeah, it's been a journey.
Certainly a journey.
Okay,
yeah, you could say that.
So 4 years ago, we were just like we as an industry, the film industry, we were experiencing. We're just like on the last legs of COVID shutdowns. The vaccine was coming out. South by Southwest was announcing its who was going to be screened, and like I was having so many people that I followed on Instagram were like posting, hey, my short or my feature made it to South by, and I'm just like watching all these people. I'm watching all these people celebrate their victories, and I'm like, oh, that's so cool. It's so cool. Like one person, she had the caption of like their feature made it in, and she was like, oh my gosh, our feature made it. And it we like in the pandemic we rented an Airbnb, and it was just like 2 directors and 2 actors that are, one of the directors ran camera, one director ran sound, and the actors were writers, and they kind of just like busted out a feature film, and now it's at South by, and I'm like, just like, I could do that.
Yeah.
I could do that.
You can do that.
I'm like, I could totally do that. And then being that the vaccine was coming out, and and I was feeling a little safer to kind of like start planning something. I had specifically like reached out to some family, and I thought of like before even like asking anybody about jumping onto something, I'm like, okay, step one, I need a place to shoot this thing. Like, I don't want, I don't even want, like, I don't want to rent an Airbnb. I don't know, for some reason. I'm like, do I just have access to anything? And I thought about that's the small town that I grew up in, Chama, New Mexico. And I reached out to a great uncle of mine, and I was like, hey, there's like an old family home that like my great grandparents used to live in that nobody lives in now, that the family kind of uses as a pseudo vacation home. I'm like, can we have the house for like, I want to make a movie. And he's like, yeah. He's like, when do you want it? And I picked like a month. That was like April or
May.
was it April, May?
It was May.
Let's just say May. And it was maybe late February or something. And yeah, once I had the location, that's when I reached out to people that I wanted to work with or I thought might be interested in, and you were one of them. I'm like, hey, are you? I don't even remember. I think I just texted you. I'm like,
Yeah.
hey,
I think you called me.
did I call
I
you?
think I remember talking to you on the phone at one night in that winter, and you were talking about, oh, I think I want to make a movie, and soon, in like, we haven't written it yet, but I want to make a movie soon. And do you want to do it?
Sounds about right. So vague. I think I want to make a movie. I might have had the month picked out. I don't even remember. Maybe it was like in the air. I don't necessarily. Maybe you would remember, but I don't know if I like asked. Like you said yes.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, hell yeah. You hadn't even written it. I don't think that we had anything about the movie itself other than you mentioned Chama and I think you mentioned May, and that was it. And it was like, do you want to shoot it? I'll let you know more, but I want to get this on your radar now.
Yeah, yeah. Because it was like essentially I set a 2 month timer is how I recall it. It's like we have 2 months till May, and I'm assembling the team right now before like I need to know what ingredients I have before jumping in. So you said yes, thankfully. And you okay over there? All right.
Yeah, surviving.
um okay. So now we I don't know what you recall about the conversations we had in pre-production, but as a story formed, I was probably keeping you up to date with like, okay, now the story we have Spencer and we have Risa on board. The story's going to revolve around them. It's a story about a couple coming into town. They're trying to figure out if they're going to break up or not. They're here to like explore themselves and like leave with a decision made.
Yeah.
And one thing I went to yeah, I was talking to somebody about it last night too. There's I forget. I was telling them that my conversation with you was like, this is kind of what I'm going for. And one thing that you said is like, Eddie, I I don't want to shoot a mumblecore.
I think I'd said that verbatim.
We are not we are don't make it a mumblecore.
What is mumblecore for those who don't know?
How would you describe it?
Um, this is funny because of what we're about to talk about. But a mumblecore movie is like a Duplass brothers film about two soft-spoken millennials who don't know what to do with their lives and have a relatively low stakes conflict that may or may not be resolved satisfactorily.
Yeah, and a lot of the other layers into it. If you Google mumblecore and like what it is, the other
Yeah, that was a trite explanation.
I
Sorry.
mean that's pretty close. That is yes. But the other bullets are like heavily improvised, very like
Like pretty lo-fi,
yeah,
low, not flashy.
yeah, very. I mean, I love my handheld, but it's like classically a part of the mumblecore brand. It's like okay, you just have a camera in there, almost like a fly on the wall, like just watching what's going down. It's not super choreographed or yeah. So you were like, I don't want to do that. I'm like, okay, fine. So then Bo, who I co-wrote it with, I think we racked our brain and like, how do we add some genre elements to this to at least like break it out a little bit from what this could fall back onto if left unchecked. So then thinking about Chama, I know it was like, okay, Chama's weird and there's lots of like everything you can think of exists in Chama in terms of like the stories that revolve around it. There's stories of like there's like a 6 level government base underground just outside of town where who knows what kind of testing goes on over
Yeah, a
there.
lot of lore. The Chama lore runs deep.
There's witchcraft in terms of I think we kind of leaned into that. Like I grew up with my mom telling me that like owls represented like there were witches that were taking form of owls during the day or whatever. They're hiding as owls. We have Sasquatch in the area. There are skinwalkers.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty
Just
much everything.
everything.
Every sort of spooky thing is out there
Yeah.
for us to mine for creative interest.
So then that informed the story, and then it kind of took the turn that it takes with adding like, okay, well, our hero's gonna go and try to prove himself to be a man. He's gonna run into some weird stuff in the forest, and then Risa is gonna stumble upon some sort of potential what's it called?
Is it
Cult.
a cult, a
Kinda.
sisterhood, maybe like a coven almost,
Yeah.
like a witch gathering?
Yeah. So the story was forming, and then I made my plans to go visit and shoot as much of the town as we could. I know that was big for me for choosing that house. It wasn't just about having a location. It was about having a larger space too. We essentially had the full town at our disposal to an extent. It was like family-owned gas station. We have a train yard. There's a gift shop. There's restaurants. There's a lot of nature spots around the area too that we try to capitalize on. And I don't know. I don't remember how much of it you were aware of as like before you got there in terms of that. But what was going through your mind as you were kind of waiting for this to happen? What were you doing?
Before we got there, I mean the whole creative side of the project kind of formed pretty late. I mean, I think we didn't really have a shooting script until we were there.
Like
But
two weeks before or
yeah,
something like that.
we had a draft a few weeks before, and we were still working on it, and throughout the whole shoot. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think the pitch that we would have this cool town, this mountain sort of mountain town, which is also sort of like a tourist destination, and the Eddie Vigil, also the Eddie Vigil family homeland, which
Kinda, yeah.
would basically, like as Eddie said, gave us all these amazing free locations and locals giving us free stuff and acting in the movie for free and just handing out pretty much anything we asked for. I'll just say that the Vigil name goes far in Chama, and we certainly took advantage of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just sort of like a filmmaking summer camp.
That's how I've
It was
described it.
perfect.
It's like,
Perfect for a no budget feature. I mean, that's the only way you can do it.
yeah, I know as far as like art too, like you're kind of like I know that we redressed the house with stuff that the gift shop owner had. He was like totally down to just we were dressing the house with like this
Yeah,
like if you look at the price tags on it, I'm
it's like
like
fancy leather pillows, and it was kind of funky stuff.
let's
It
not
was
talk about
great.
the pillow. I have nightmares about the pillow.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, but I look at the price tags and I'm like, oh, he's just letting us have this here. This lamp is like really expensive. Nobody break anything. We don't have insurance. Okay. Now, I have the cinematographer here with me, so I'm thinking about what, when you look back on the film, let's just look at it as a whole in general now that we're on the other end of all of that. I mean, go back to like on the day and stuff, but like what f- what fun visuals do you think about when you're like, okay, like I shot that and I'm happy about that. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know.
I mean, I'm really proud of the whole movie. I mean, especially like when I reflect on what resources and just the scale of what we were doing was. I mean, we had, I mean, not nothing, but it was close to it. I mean, we had a camera, we had, an AC and a camera assistant, and a gaffer, and the lighting package fit in the gaffer's sedan, like car, and the camera fit in my car, and that was as far as camera and lighting stuff. That was it. Um, but we were still able to, make something that looks like a real movie. I mean, it looks great. I think it, and so much of that came down to the really unique locations. Us shooting around around the sun, picking the right times of day to be in the right places. Um, just pointing the camera in the right spot and letting our actors do their thing. I mean, that's, a lot of times you don't necessarily need a ton of stuff to make something look awesome.
I know something I think about when you mention I don't know I heard you didn't say it specifically, but like environment, like you said, the having the space. I think about how lucky like we got. Like I look back on it fondly for sure and think about like even the month that I chose, I haven't really been to Chama much at all prior, and I wasn't really aware of like what that month meant for the area, but it was like we when I got there a week early, and then you got there a little bit after that, and we had some time together to prep, which was nice. But the area was coming into spring as we essentially started shooting. So like I was there and the trees were like brown and dead.
Yeah, there's still snow
And
up on top of the pass.
yeah. And I'm just like, "Oh no, it's kind of ugly."
Yeah, it's a little bit dingy, but it was coming into bloom, and then it
Exactly.
continued blooming as we were there.
And I'll tell you what, there's what was it called? Jeez. It's not called Generals um Lieutenant, I don't know. There's a specific field that we shot a couple of scenes in just outside of
Oh,
town.
the wildlife
Sergeants.
sergeants
Wild,
reserve.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So Sergeants, I had never been out there before as a kid, but like going out there is so beautiful, and the time that we had when like all the fields are just green and the mountains are just like everything was just so beautiful out there. We have some really cool behind the scenes shots from that area too. Like it just, I remember like thinking about the camera and like you can kind of point the camera, it's wide open with nobody in existence in all directions, and it just looks pretty in all
Yeah,
areas.
yeah, that was a really cool spot. I mean, it's just like a huge grassy rolling hills, like field of rolling hills with the few little trees, and then the mountains are in every direction around it. It's spectacular. New Mexico, come to New Mexico Tourism 101.
Visit
Yeah, visit
chama.com.
chama.com for sure. Um, yeah, I mean there were so many places we were able to get access to for free, basically with unlimited access, essentially unlimited access for our crew. By virtue of shooting there, there was the train station,
Train
which
yard.
the train yard, train station, train tracks for the Cumbres and Toltec Scenic Railroad,
Mm-hmm,
which
mm-hmm.
is
Spans how long?
many miles.
Forget the
Yeah, it's a
number.
line in the movie.
Did you know that Trauma was founded in 1857? Our iconic Cumbres and Toltec Scenic Railroad spans 64 miles all the way to Antonito, Colorado.
I did not know that.
But yeah, we were just able to shoot in a train yard for free for an entire day with no one was even watching us, basically, which is pretty crazy. And looks super cool. We shot in a bunch of like restaurants and bars and
Think about
stores.
the waterfall.
We hiked up to a waterfall. We hiked all day up a mountain with everyone to a waterfall.
You shouldered the camera.
I carried this heavy ass camera all the way up the hiking trail, which was great. Great time. Yeah. Some other scenic vistas we landed?
Well, I know we did like a campground. We did the trailer park. We did the gas station. We did
a lot of house.
We did like the little bits in the
walking down the highway.
The walking down the highway.
Yeah.
We did nighttime forest.
Yeah, some night exteriors in the forest were cool.
That was crazy.
And they did the cabin.
Yeah, exterior cabin.
Exterior cabin.
Not pointing at the cabin.
Yeah, no interior cabin.
Yeah, and then there's like the little I forget what it's called in town. Like the tiny little river stream that we shot at too was kind of what was a cute day.
Oh, by the camp, the one that was yeah, where he throws his canteen in the water and he goes fishing.
Yeah,
the fishing scene.
Yeah,
that's a great scene.
We had a lot of fun. Let's do it again.
Yeah, let's go back. I'd love to.
I know. I forget what you shot with specifically or what we shot on, but I do really enjoy how it looks and just seeing like Spencer's face and the way that he was able to be for that movie. Like he gets a little insane in there, which is fun.
Yeah, Spencer, our lead actor.
Spencer Weitzel. And just the way that the frame highlights, like, I don't even know the way that it kind of stretches the face and makes it look like it just really accentuates what they're feeling, and it's a very vibey, and I a lot of stills that we took from the movie stick in my head.
Yeah, I think in Chama, the movie, or Out Past Dark as it's titled, I call it Chama Days a lot still because that was our old title. But yeah, the movie it really is entirely about the personal experiences of these two characters, and the journeys they go on, first individually and then coming together at the end. So we really tried to use the camera to embody their experience, their subjective experience. So that winded up being a lot of wider lenses, getting the camera closer to them, being close to their eye line, being close to them, following them around with a handheld, camera on my shoulder. Just really trying to be with each of the actors in each of their scenes, and having the audience be within their perspective as much as we could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we played a lot with perspective. That was kind of like our foundational piece, from what I recall.
Yeah, I think when we were prepping, we always wanted to know, like, whose perspective is the scene from? Is it of the two leads, whose perspective are we in right now? Are we going to exchange perspective within the scene, or is it just about one of them? That was always one of the first questions we asked whenever we approached a scene.
Yeah, the perspective. I don't know. You're talking about that, and that's good foundational information. I was just going to share a quick fun memory that is one of my favorite sequences in the film is when while they're at the diner, and this hits home for me, and it still hits home for me for me now. The scene is almost, yeah, Matilda and Gregory are at lunch, and he's being called out for all these little things he's doing wrong, and he's getting kind of pissed off, and he asks her, like, what do you want from me?
Mm-hmm.
And then she eventually says, like, I don't want to live with a boy. I need you to be a man, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Yeah.
And that he gets emotional, and he storms out of the restaurant. And I enjoy how, like, for me, tonally, I enjoy going from, like, this is real and serious, and, like, okay, we were laughing, but now that felt like a real moment, to going to going right back to, like, he's pouty outside, and I'm thinking about how we shot that. I'll get to how we shot it, but he's kind of like walking away. She tries to catch up with him and be like, hey, you didn't pay for the bill, like, hey, don't walk away, where are you going? And he just runs off. And that's when he, like, eventually gets at whatever. He goes, they argue in the house. But I'm thinking about when we shot it. At some point, I remember you had pitched, like, hey, I can get the camera in the car, and, like, can we shoot, this is an option. And for that shot previously, I'm like, for a different day, I was like, no, we're good. Let's just shoot it like this. But for this one, I kind of had that, your words came into my head again, and I'm like, because as he's walking away from the building, you have the shoulder rig, and you're trying to, like, walk backwards and track him, and I'm like, this isn't work. This is just so clunky and weird. And then I was like, hey, Max, I think this is the
car shot. Yeah, that's one of my favorite shots of the movie. Is I sat in the trunk of, I think, my own car, the hatchback. The hatch was open. I sat in the back, and we used it as a rickshaw or dolly, basically. And we did this pulling. I pulled the camera with Gregory as he runs away from Matilda, and we're just leading Gregory in the car to keep up with him as he sprints away from her.
No, it was cool. I mean, that's trauma for you. We just go on the street and do our thing, and we have
there's no rules. There's literally
there's no rules.
I mean, we didn't do anything too crazy on that movie, but it was certainly no one really was paying attention.
We didn't do anything crazy. No, I think from my perspective, I remember it being kind of funny with, like, hey, Max, I think let's do the car. And then you got it together, like, the team got it together so quickly. I was kind of like, it was just funny how fast it came together.
Yeah.
Before I knew it, you were in the back of this car.
Yeah, we were just ready to go. I think, I mean, we had someone driving. We had, like, Corduroy. I think Corduroy was riding in the car with the boom sticking out the hatch too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You and Sound were in the back, scrunched.
Yeah, and there's a good picture of us, I think,
somewhere.
Us squeezed into the hatch of the car.
Yeah.
Together.
And then I think one of our producer, I think Matt was driving, but, like, just how quickly it came. Like, we were riding some sort of momentum in that moment. It just it flowed very well.
Yeah.
And I look back on that very fondly. I'm like, this was fun. That was fun.
Yeah. I think, we had been shooting for a little while at that point. So the team was, in any shoot, it takes I feel like a week at least for the team to really gel and get a rhythm and get into the swing of how to work together. But after that, I mean, if you have a good team and everyone's working together, you can do some really awesome stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think about my cousin Javi that was during the same kind of shoot, because we're outside. Luckily we weren't, like, there weren't many locals that came to bother us, but that day there was a guy that kept lingering, and Javi went and kind of handled him across the street.
I forget, what did he want?
I don't know.
Was he saying something?
He might have wanted to be in the movie, or
he was just being annoying.
Yeah, he was being annoying.
Yeah. Did Javi just talk to him long enough for us to shoot the scene?
Something like that. Yeah. He was just shooting it with him over there.
Javi's a legend.
Yeah.
Javi, he's your cousin, I guess?
Yeah, technically second cousin.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, local fixer.
Good times. Thanks, Javier. Okay. So that's that movie. I don't know. Maybe there's other stuff to talk about. I'm trying to think before we move on from it if there's anything else we should highlight. Do you want to talk about? Do you mind if we talk about your perspective in terms of your investing in this project? Because I think that's important to kind of talk about in terms of like mindset, and I can talk about how I can my responses to your investment and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff
I'm
too.
like
But
in terms
the
of time or
financial,
financially.
all of the
Yeah,
above,
yeah. I
really.
mean, I guess. I mean, it was. I mean, it's both. So I mean, just like the bare facts of this situation. You know, I was out there for 4 full weeks, um, away from home in Chama, and everyone on the set, including myself, was volunteering. You know, there were no rates or anything, and I rented the camera out of pocket, and our very small but still, you know, a little G&E rental as well. Um, and you know, everyone was putting, you know, between myself and Eddie and Matt and Margot, we were all putting in our own money to make the movie happen. You know, we didn't have any. We had some family investors, but not
Yeah,
not
they
not a
eventually
ton.
came in, but up
Yeah,
front it was all us.
yeah,
I got
yeah.
help later for other stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, the deal. I mean, with any movie, you know, the you know, people put in their own money to little movies all the time, and you know, the idea is, you know, maybe some way down the line you'll make the money back, but you know, most likely not, or maybe not as much as you put in, or you know, there's no guarantee of return. But sometimes if you want to make a movie, that's sort of the only way to do it, is to make it happen yourself. So. Um, So yeah, I mean, you know, this was my first feature. I think, like you were talking about at the time, we were just coming out of sort of the initial depths of COVID, and I just, you know, we all really wanted to make a movie and make something happen, and I was, you know, luckily enough, we were all in a spot to be able to contribute and do it. You know, it wasn't a ton of money compared to, you know, any uh, most films, but it was still a little bit that we were all putting in to do it.
Let's not compare. But
Yeah.
for
Let's just say we didn't have $1 million. It wasn't a 10 million. It wasn't a 1 million. It
yeah.
wasn't 100K. It was
I mean, I
a
know
little budget.
yeah. Okay. Yes. I want to here's what I want to hear from Max. I'll set it up and you can follow however you want. But my initial pitch and expectation, because I'm working on being more direct and being more open and more honest and stuff. Like I try to be as transparent as possible with like production and what I'm putting in and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of expectation, I don't think I necessarily talked about it, or I might have, where I was like, okay, I would love to have you as the DP. Really have fun working with you. Um, I own a couple of like smaller cameras,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
I am heading into this being like worst case scenario, I'm fine shooting it on the Sony A7S II or this other Canon, or like we have some free options that like, and then maybe we'll pull together favors and like the way that
There was a way to do it without
yeah.
spending as much money.
Yeah, so then I guess hearing about when, because the thing that I take away from what you do is like, okay, I don't know how it goes in your head, but what I'm receiving is like, all right, well, if we're gonna do it, let's like you find ways to elevate the projects that you're a part of,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
and I always appreciate that from like, okay, I always appreciate the elevation. Like I have a hard time pushing it up and like trying to ask for more than I feel like I deserve or whatever I feel I deserve. So, um, yeah, hearing about like why not go for, you kind of maybe said it, but the
Like,
further investment of like, okay, well,
yeah,
I actually want to shoot it on this, and this is
make it as good as it can be. It's obviously it's a balance. You can spend all your money and
sure.
but there's diminishing returns. But I feel like for any feature film, we there are a few things that can make your life a lot easier or make the quality jump up. You know, uh, have a lot more return on investment, I guess, as far as the quality of the final film. So I was like, let's get an Alexa, let's get some super speeds and a tripod, and that'll be enough to take us from sort of like step one to step two. Um, and I brought a couple little LED lights and some stands and stuff, and we were able to take the quality level to a spot where I was happy with what we were able to achieve. Having given that we were all going to be sacrificing or spending a month of our time out there, I wanted to make the most of it within sort of the reasonable, what I could reasonably afford to do.
Yeah, and I know the way that I interpret it is in two ways. Is like, A, you're taking care of yourself and making sure it's worth the time that you're putting in. And at the same time, I also feel taken care of because it's like, okay, he cares about the project and the story and that this comes out good. And it doesn't just benefit him, it benefits, like, everybody gets to benefit from that. So it's,
I mean, it's all about, I mean, I keep saying balance, but it's, if you're going to spend your time on something, and in this case, a lot of time on something, you need to make sure, try to do the best you can to make sure that it's worth it in the end. So, if that's a matter of renting a camera or not, that in this case was doable.
Yeah. Yeah. And then on the, I guess just to, in getting, making the money back is a whole other process on the back end that so luckily stuff mostly worked out.
Mostly it worked out. I think we made our money back almost all of it.
So close.
So very close. Closer 100% closer than I expected.
For sure.
No profit riches, but we made the production costs,
which is great. That's great, I think.
Definitely.
There's so much I want to talk about with you. Sojourn has, in terms of like the backstory of how that came to be, it's very connected to the trauma experience. We had met, or we had become, it was just me. I don't think you guys.
Yeah, no, Eddie met our benefactor.
Yeah.
And friend.
Yeah, somebody ended up lending us access to her location. We wanted to shoot in the forest for some of the out past dark scenes. And I was debating on like, okay, do we just... I don't really feel comfortable just going out into miscellaneous forest around here. This is sketchy. There's so much wildlife out here.
Yeah, skinwalkers.
There's that, and there's bears.
Yeah, who knows what?
So either way, we got access to like a cabin. We pulled power from it. We shot around the cabin. So
we stayed there.
We stayed there.
We stayed overnight.
That was a lovely experience.
Yeah, it was very nice.
Thanks, Linda. And so we had, and then she ends up reaching out later, being like, "Oh my gosh." She wasn't there for the production days. We had Rob out there with us.
Yeah. I never met her.
But he talked to her and had a lovely time with us. Loved meeting us. And she wanted to be a part of the fun. Pitched a story, and that's kind of where Sojourn was born. And then she ended up funding the short film, and we had a $50,000 short budget to kind of work with, and we wanted to utilize the cabin. Or at least I wanted to utilize the cabin and kind of leverage some of the New Mexico contacts and go out there again. Mm-hmm. And then they have tax incentives too that let us stretch it, I think, to almost like $60,000.
Yeah,
which is nice.
Yeah, New Mexico Film Commission. Shout out those guys.
Visit newmexico.com.
For real.
Okay, so then it was nice going from making a feature for such a low amount to like, okay, well, at least we have this budget for a short. What do we want to do with that? And wanted to work with you again and go back out there, essentially relive some of that magic. But this one very different genre, like tone.
Very different.
This one is about a young woman kind of working through a lot of grief, and she's lost essentially both of her father figures for various reasons, and is trying to find herself. Is in an abusive relationship with her husband, and kind of there's like a lot of story to fit in. And I think we had like a 12 page script or something, and it got a team together for that, and went back out, shot Albuquerque, shot Trauma. I think we had 4 days, but
4 days shooting.
But we can talk about what we pushed for on this one comparative to coming out of like Out Past Dark. What was your perspective on diving into this?
Yeah, Sojourn was fun. I mean, it was definitely much more of a production in the traditional sense. Not that it wasn't a big show, obviously, but $60K for a 4-day shoot is a lot more than we had for for Out Past Dark, which was less than that for like 4 weeks. So it was a whole different, definitely a significant change in the scale. We had real genie truck. We had a Steadicam. We had a bunch of locations, 2 different cities we were shooting in. It was a small reel shoot, which was a lot of fun to have experienced sort of the range of scopes with Eddie. Both from our sort of DIY short films to Out Past Dark to Sojourn. I think as far as the aesthetic, this sort of the production value style, we were aiming for a bit of elevation above what we did with Out Past Dark. Much more control in our camera work. We leaned into Steadicam quite a bit for our camera language, flowing between different shots and scenes. In terms of the camera itself and the lensing, that was relatively similar. Lighting took a big step up. We had a proper 2-person lighting team and the lighting truck with those guys. Still not huge setups, but quite a bit more extensive than anything we did on Out Past Dark too. So it felt like shooting a proper short film.
Yeah. I agree. It was fun. I think about you explained it well with like the difference with the control, with instead of tracking characters with your shoulder rig and kind of like the handheld vibe, it was very a lot more intentional with the movements with the Steadicam, and that felt like the biggest change in terms of like production flow that we had to go through on that.
Yeah, I mean, our other shorts had been much more, everything we'd done up to that point had been much more like Out Past Dark and very handheld and, just finding the frame and being pretty loose. Where this was, what's our A point, what's our B point, how do we, being very precise, trying to be as much more precise with everything as far as pointing the camera.
Yeah, and I know that we had to. The fun part of having the budget too was like, okay, I could actually get. We had a different producer on this one, and having somebody to kind of like negotiate what we're looking for was kind of. I mean, I enjoyed having that for I guess this size of a. I mean, it's really helpful to have like a line producer type that understands where money's going and is trying to balance the whole thing, but. Similar to Out Past Dark, this took, like we ended up, I invested my whole budget back into the project. I think is what I ended up doing, or I might have, for my rate, because I was given a rate, but I was like, I'll just give me gas money and I'll make it work. Like this is I'm gonna go visit family anyway. But I remember I had to like work to chip away stuff to get the steady cam because that was something we had talked about with like what's the difference here? Let's get steady on this. Let's get steady. And
Yeah,
it'd be like,
yeah,
hey,
that was our big push and sacrifice on a. I put in some of my rate to make a few things happen on camera side too. Um, yeah, I mean it's kind of amazing, sort of at any budget level, even if you're making $100 million movie, it's the money is never enough, and it always goes to all sorts of places you don't expect or don't realize it needs to go to. So even suddenly we had this seemingly huge budget, we're still fighting to balance all the competing needs.
yeah. So that's that. I know, I'll bounce it back to you to kind of keep that same flow. But what are there any moments in that, visually speaking, that you look back on and you're like, ooh, that's my work right there.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few scenes I really like. We had some more extended. They're not really. As far as oneers go, they're not that complex, but just longer steady sequences. Single shot steady sequences. There's there's the opening scene of the movie where our lead character gets out of her room, walks throughout the house, has, talks to all her family members, goes through the kitchen, and we land on the shot that leads into the reveal of her boyfriend and soon to be husband. That was just all the choreography and the blocking and the just precision in making that continuous take happen was something I was really happy to have a chance to experiment with, and I thought turned out really well. We had another shot with some similarities later on when she goes to the nightclub. We follow her throughout the club, coming into her interaction with one of the dancers and with the
father-in-law,
yeah,
boyfriend's dad.
boyfriend's dad. There was a whole sequence, much totally different, much darker and more problematic in that one, but also similarly on the camera side, I thought we were able to achieve some cool stuff with an extended Steadicam shot.
Yeah, I'm remembering there was the one scene that this was more of a simpler setup camera wise, but I think it was something that you maybe were very flexible with and were pitching ideas on the day. It was maybe our last day of the shoot where it was night, interior. So we're with Elena and Ezra's not home, and the father-in-law comes over and she's like making her dinner, and he's got like a bottle of wine, and this is like the big scene where we reveal the turn of like he makes an advance and like touches her leg, and we're like I think you have it tilted down looking at the hand touch, and then you tilt up to see her face and like follow the action, and we'd shot it in various ways, but you were like asking me how close is this, too close, and I was like, no, like let's try even closer.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that closeness. Was very fun to kind of contrast some of our wider shots in the short.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the steady work was pretty wide. Yeah, and then we had that intimate moment in the kitchen. Yeah, I mean, I think just being able to tell the story with the camera, directing the lens from the hand up to her face and seeing that reaction just with a tilt up was worked really well.
Yeah, and I know I enjoyed really holding on her and her performance, as like, because I know in a different version of the film we could have cut away to seeing him in the hallway or like anything like that, but just sticking so close and being uncomfortable with her in that space, like I know that was kind of like I really enjoyed that moment.
I mean, I think similarly to Out Past Dark, we were always thinking about perspective and Sojourn, and in this case, it was much more simple because we were always in Elena's perspective, but trying to be as subjective with her as possible. You know, whether that's with the Steadicam, with our extended shots following her, like quite literally her perspective, looking at what she's looking at, seeing what's around her, just following her closely as she moved through space, or getting the camera, even if it's locked on sticks, just physically very close to her and seeing what she is experiencing, and then seeing her reaction from close range.
Yeah, we did a lot more contrast between the close-up and the wides. Because I know I shared it recently with a filmmaker buddy of mine. He's also a director, and he watched it, and he had texted, like, he's like, those wide shots were amazing in that short. And I'm like, oh, thank you.
Nice. That's nice to hear.
I need to go and rewatch it and to be like,
I haven't watched it in a while.
yeah. So I'm like, oh, I remember loving the wides, and that, like, even inside because we had access to that cabin that we talked about, like in the woods, like it's a massive.
Yeah, it's a large building.
It's a large building.
A lodge
with a big, open, central kind of like living room area. And it was fun being able to like widen out and kind of show as much of it as we could. Like I know I enjoy a lot of those shots.
Yeah, all the therapy
and
scenes
different directions too.
Yeah. We did with the therapy scenes and her re-entering the cabin and all those moments. We were able to show the big spaces and the big windows and the view out to the mountains.
Yeah,
you know, it is even a larger space because you have such an awesome view outside.
The view is half of it for sure. I'm like, because I have seen other stills from other similar cabin looking things. I'm like, oh wait, this cabin. I'm like, that's not our cabin, but it looks similar to our cabin. But then I look around it. I'm like, wait, there's no wide vista in front of it. It's just like it's not as grandiose without.
Yeah. I think the challenge with a cabin movie is most cabins don't have that many windows, and you're just kind of in a little dark room a lot of the time, and maybe that's what that's what you're going for. But in our case, it was much broader, much wider scope.
You want to have that depth. You want to open it up, right? That's the goal.
For us, yeah.
Okay, sometimes it's not
Depends.
the goal.
I don't know, but I thought it was nice, and it was the location we had, which was on the production end of it. That is half the battle.
Yes. Okay. Well, that I'll button up our collaborations, and I look forward to seeing what comes next for you. I mean, we're not ending the show yet. I have one more question.
Yeah.
Or two. We'll see how long I can keep him here.
See how long I can stay here.
But yeah, I'll just say that I'm excited to see what comes next, what other stuff that you put on camera, and then I'm also excited to see, again, what excuses I can come up with to work with you some more.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah. Segue. There was, I guess, just for those at home that aren't here with us in LA. I did screenshot a thing I saw on Instagram. This is I think from Crew Stories. It's not a account that I follow, but somebody else shared it. This is an anonymous member posted. This is from a crew member's spouse's perspective and a marital message. Okay, so the spouse is saying, watching my partner slowly fall into a pit of complete depression. Every creative bone in his body tries to pull him out, but very little to no work since the strikes has just ruined him. Lost our health insurance, behind on rent, piling up medical bills. Our cars, of course, are breaking down because when it rains, it pours. He pays his dues, hundreds each quarter, with no work in sight, shoveling out the last of our money without a job in return for over 20 months can really break a person. Repeatedly paying for something that doesn't return in work is insanity. Never have I seen someone so full of tenacity, so hardworking, understanding, with the most integrity. The fantastic, dedicated crew member, the sweetest man, fall so low. No communication anymore, and sometimes drinking his way through his days. And I read that and I'm like that there's a lot of layers to that, but it is in the vein of like kind of the state of the industry right now. Um, and I thought it was interesting that the spouse had kind of like shared this almost, it feels like, on behalf of the partner, and that's also kind of interesting to me. But I don't know, how do you take that?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard stories like that. There's been a lot of stories like that shared over the last couple of years, as the industry has gone through so much turmoil. Um, really, since COVID in 2020 has been sort of a nonstop roller coaster in various ways, and since the strikes especially, and then the contraction of production and both overall and production leaving LA, more than it even did before. Yeah, it's been a tough time for a lot of people in the city who work in film. I mean, there is a whole discussion about sort of the outlook of the business in general and in LA in the future, which is not necessarily super optimistic. Although I still do believe that there will be a place for movies and for film for a long time to come. Exactly what that looks like, I'm not. I don't think anyone knows exactly how that's going to look. And there have been efforts that have redoubled themselves, especially since the fires in January, to try to bring production back to LA and incentivize more production in California. And my hope, I think, all we can hope for is that if there's any good that comes from the fires in January, that it will cause the industry and the government in California to reprioritize their efforts towards keeping not just keeping film production here in LA and having it not just be a town of celebrities and execs and boardrooms, but also what has historically made it so special, and what has made this place Hollywood, which is actually making movies and making stuff here. So fingers crossed that all those efforts lead to some real change and improvement from what is currently not a great situation, for people getting work in town. That being said, there still is tons of work being made in LA every day. Some of it's not necessarily, a lot of it's not necessarily union feature films. A lot of it's music videos and small commercials and social content and vertical video, TikTok movies, and some of the stuff has maybe more or less dubious artistic value, but there is work to be had in different ways. So, it can seem like kind of like a little bit of a twilight zone sometimes when you look around town and you see young people booked out for months shooting basically TikTok movies, and veteran union crew unemployed for months because they don't make studio movies in LA. So things have certainly changed a lot over the last 5 years, and my hope is that we're able to have work for everyone some way or another. But yeah, I think the future is yet to be written on that.
Well said. Well said. I think yeah, that was. I don't really have much to add to that. I guess the last thing I want to touch on is it's related in the way of like you're saying, things are evolving, things are changing. As we heard in the story, it's like specific types of work is on the decline right now. Like you mentioned, the contraction, and like there's lots of variables out there. So to me, it feels like a thing that will be tested, is our value systems are kind of like are kind of on the will be tested. It's like, okay, what there's some easy value systems to kind of like have more concrete answers on, like, okay, what rate am I willing to work for? What kind of hours am I willing to accept? Um, and then there's other layers to it too, like, all right, um, what kind of content am I not willing to work on? What kind of people am I not willing to work for? When am I willing to walk away from something when I do see it on set, like that? Like those kinds of things are feel more volatile as the industry becomes more volatile. It's like, all right, there's work, but is this the work I want to be
Yeah,
doing?
I mean I think that's the question that everyone has to ask themselves, and um, certainly lately, where yeah, I mean the opportunities that you might be given, or especially for people who are more accustomed or spend a lot of time in the union world doing TV shows and movies, or just bigger stuff in general, is as that has declined recently, do you want to do a non-union ultra low budget social media movie, or work on content for influencer marketing that isn't going to give you health insurance and maybe pays half the rate, but it's still work, but it may not be the work you want. And then the question is, do you want to stay in this business if work now means something different than it used to be, or at what point does it still make sense to be doing this, to be doing this new film business?
Yeah, yeah. Maybe to, because I don't know how you see it, but I think I told you about this production. It's been some time since I was on this one, but I've been reflecting on it, and this ties into the value system stuff. With I was on this feature, and uh, I'll keep it as vague as possible here. Essentially, what happened was the women were planning on stopping working until this person left set, and it was even something that came to my attention as well. Someone came up to me and was like, "Hey, by the way, this is kind of going on. We're planning on essentially walking off of set if this person doesn't leave. Are essentially, are you with us in this?"
Yeah.
And I essentially froze in that scenario and I didn't do anything. And I was like, well, I mean, there's enough of them where this I don't know how much of a difference I make, so I kind of froze in that scenario. But looking back on it, I kind of wish that I had actually stood up for, like, okay, yeah, I don't like what they're doing shouldn't be happening. This person shouldn't be here, and kind of stand more firm in like where my values are at. So that's also an element of like, am I willing to walk away from something based off the behavior of somebody I'm essentially working for, or am I gonna stay and collect my like that sort of stuff is also something I'm specifically thinking about. But
Yeah, I mean those are I mean that's timeless tension in the film business, even for all time. I mean how many cases of misbehavior, bad people, bad actors on a set have we all heard about?
sure,
And whether to put up with it because it's this is your job and this is your living, or to walk away from it. And if you walk away from it, do you call them out or do you keep quiet? It all depends, I guess. But it's I guess those are personal choices ultimately. But I'm certainly someone who I don't want to put up with bullshit from people, and I don't think other people should have to put up with it. I think there's in the past definitely been on the crew side some probably more deference to bad behavior from productions than is right. Certainly like morally, but also maybe even I think people often default to putting up with things and collecting the paycheck and not raising a fuss because they want to keep the next job and they don't want to be out of work in the future because they made a fuss, which is totally reasonable, but also like if everyone acts that way, then no one ever changes their behavior. So in theory, that's what stuff like the union is for, or being able to have collective power on the workers' side to enforce a certain minimum of behavior and decorum and paying people on time and not abusing them. Obviously, lately that's not been as effective as so much work is in LA is non-union these days and is on a smaller scale, and all those people are completely vulnerable to whatever the whims of the situation are, and really your only recourse is just to, like you said, is to walk away, which is unfortunate. I wish it was people were able to take collective action more easily.
That would be lovely. And that's kind of like what's on my mind. It's harder from my position as a script supervisor. It's like if I walk away from set, camera still rolls, and like me leaving doesn't necessarily make an impact on that specific day. But I know like the departments that you're a part of, if you guys shut down, turn off camera or turn off the lights, there's no shooting. So there's like a lot of power there. And I know that crews in those positions do a very good job of standing up for certain values, like, hey, we haven't gotten paid, we're not showing up, or hey, you haven't fed us.
Yeah.
Like there's those things, but it, like you said about the vulnerability of a non-union shoot, it does seem helpful to have people who have strong values that can, like, it, where it's not, sure, some people look at it as like making a fuss, but it's actually
standing up for yourself.
Yeah,
standing up for what's right.
Yeah, exactly. Standing up for what's right is the other side of that coin. Is like, we're not making a fuss. This is what's
just what you're doing is wrong, and it's probably it's either illegal or it's just wrong.
Yeah,
sometimes,
and I'm not putting
both.
up with it. And we're not putting up with it anymore. So these lights are off until this is addressed, like that. That's just something I've been thinking of.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. I mean, it is. I mean, that being said, in lean times when you need the paycheck, it's hard, and I don't necessarily fault anyone who's going to prioritize keeping the bills paid and the lights on. But yeah, it's just a tension. I wish it was simple. There was a simple answer to make everyone keep everyone employed and paid and in a a safe and friendly workplace. And honestly, most of the time, I don't think every set. I think it's, at least in my experience, it's a rare set where there's bad behavior or the production is malignant. But it does happen sometimes.
Yeah.
So most of the time, at least in my experience, it's been generally okay.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we have our own ways of like making sure we're on the sets that with people that we trust, and if so and so recommends us or a certain producer reaches out, it's like, okay, this person, they're good people, and that's who I try to surround myself with.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's
yeah, I mean, that's kind of a good and bad part about the business is a lot of the times you're getting hired by people you've already worked with. That's probably how it is most of the time, for me at least. And if you worked with them before, you probably have a good idea of how it's going to go. So, you can maybe choose not to work with them again if you didn't like it the first time, or you already know it's going to be all right. So you just keep going.
Yeah. Well, that I wanted to jump into some heavier stuff at the end. So thank you for joining me on that adventure.
Yeah, of course.
That's basically the end of the show. I do want to highlight again where people can find you, and maybe give us a little insight onto your hopes for like what's coming up next, and kind of close us out with that.
For sure. So you can find me online at maxgoldbergdp.com or on Instagram, Max Goldberg, just my name. And you'll see all my DP work on there. And but yeah, going forward this year, have a few more spec projects in the pipeline. Maybe a feature. Would love to shoot a feature this year. Don't have one locked in quite yet. Just some early conversations right now, but it's been a couple years since the last one, so I'd love to try to get one in 25, and of course with the specs and the commercial world in general, it's it's not totally knowable exactly how that'll evolve, but I would love to start getting some more commissioned, budgeted work on that side, and not have it be all self-generated this year. So pushing forward on that, and trying to see some things convert over would be awesome.
You're going to South by.
And I'm going to South by Southwest on Friday. That'll be probably by the time this comes out, it'll already be over. But
you'll be back.
I'll be back. But yeah, I'm going to South by this weekend with a film that I was the gaffer on. But it's called The Singers. Shot and directed by my friend Sam Davis, who's a very talented cinematographer, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And looking forward to it. It's my first time going.
Good luck out there. It sounds cool, because we had talked briefly at some point about Sundance, and like you were considering going out there. I think you had said if you had something playing out there, you would have gone.
Yeah.
And this is that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I haven't been to a ton of the big name festivals. I went to Kameramaj in Poland last year, which was super fun. I guess it was 2 years ago technically, but this will be my first of the big name brand American festivals, and I've been waiting to go just to have a film I worked on that's in it. I feel like it's always a better time if you're part of the festival and not just showing up off the street. It's a little bit more.
You have that talking.
A little more engaging, a little bit more, relevant. So, really excited to go.
No, I hope it goes well. That's exciting. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. I'm sure you'll post updates as we'll see. I don't know. Follow Max.
Yeah,
keep up.
Yeah.
And
anyone happy to talk to anyone.
And we'll have you back for episode 153 or something. We'll see when you're back.
Yeah, we'll see when 3 more years, and who knows what else has changed. It's gone by.
Ooh, okay. Well, that's the show. Thanks again for coming back. It was nice catching up and going back into nostalgia mode. Thanks for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, share. Until next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.